IVM.
To all our listeners tuning in, this is a trigger warning. We will be delving into some sensitive things. If you feel you will be affected, please tune out right now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Marbles Lost and Found. I'm Zain.
I'm Avanti, and we're here again with Alicia Halani, who's a practicing psychotherapist in Bombay. And today we're going to be talking about bipolar, borderline, and OCD.
Yes, that is correct. Because I think the last time we had Alicia on the show, we talked about schizophrenia and DID primarily, which I don't know about you guys, but to me was really fascinating. I just kept on asking questions. But today, there are a couple of more things that I feel like we need to talk about. So, Avanti, again, I will let you sort of kick this one off.
Okay. We were talking about in the last session the impact of trauma on identity. And the impact of, basically trauma on identity. And I thought, could we kickstart this session with talking about borderline personality and what people think of it first of all and what it really is?
Frankly, can I even say that I don't even know what borderline personality disorder is?
Yeah.
So I know that people who have it, but I don't even know what it is.
Yeah. So again, one of the main criteria to be diagnosed with borderline personality disorder is you have to have gone through some kind of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And how it impacts the other criteria are, you find it really difficult to trust people, to build intimate relationships.
And a sense of chronic emptiness.
Yes.
I believe is also another symptom.
Major abandonment issues.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling like a lack of or unsure about boundaries.
Yeah.
So either get really, really close and then at the slightest fear of rejection get really, 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 really distant.
Yeah. So I remember having had certain clients with this diagnosis, and even in therapy it was really hard to gain their trust. It's like, they wouldn't show up consistently and just
and they're accused of being manipulative. Because I remember when I was learning about this stuff, and I one of my professors said that, oh my God, if you ever get a borderline client, just don't take them on. I was like,
that's such a horrible thing to say.
That's horrible. But they're like, they're crafty and they're always testing your worth and whether you're actually going to be there for them. And they always want to be, they're so dependent on you that they need to be in touch all the time. And they will call you and they'll, suicide threats galore kind of thing.
Yeah. So it's either that or the other extreme where there's just no engagement.
Right.
And there's just this disdain and mistrust completely and being super inconsistent.
But it's such a dismissive way of looking at a person. I think the minute you hear as a therapist that this person has borderline, it's almost like the past abuse and the past trauma and all these, symptoms that are a result of this. Doesn't really matter. It's just that this person's just a really difficult person and I'm not going to want to deal with them.
I see.
Have you ever heard that or come across any of that, Alicia?
What exactly?
Just that judgment, that thought that...
Yeah, I feel, it's so important for a therapist to have that kind of empathy and, that, you mean people in general viewing that or therapists viewing that?
I'm sorry, it was just a second. I haven't understood the question at all.
Me neither, actually. I guess what I wanted to know is, have you come across that judgment?
Yeah. I think that not really taking into consideration the entire context of the trauma of the person and just reacting to their behavior and how.
Right.
Yeah.
So now just to ask one thing about borderline, where you said there had to be some sort of trauma. Is that again sort of very similar to PTSD?
No.
Is it not? Okay, fine. I don't know, which is why I'm asking.
No.
So
PTSD is when you've gone through something traumatic and then you have an intrusion of those traumatic images or thoughts or getting triggered by things.
But someone with the borderline diagnosis
could have PTSD. Yeah.
Could have PTSD. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
But they're not the same thing.
No, yeah.
Okay, so the distinction between the two would be post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, would be, those intrusional thoughts or feelings based off a trauma, and borderline may include that as well, but it would also include that major detachment from people or situations, or not knowing boundaries and being like extremely or being extremely too close, or
Would you say that BPD, borderline personality, is more of a relational cluster of symptoms, and PTSD is more of an internal, like what you're dealing with because of the past? Like a lot of people who've been in the war,
yes,
have a lot of PTSD symptoms. A lot of people. I'm not saying
But everything is sort of overlapping in that sense, you know,
Right.
because both things are internal and both things
Sure.
are relational also.
they're very nuanced. I feel so. Okay,
But normally, sorry, and just one more thing, because I was just going back to borderline. I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of only women are ever diagnosed with borderline.
really.
Have you ever heard of a guy where you'd be like, okay, you I have it. Oh, yeah.
But I think there is a statistic that does say that
It's mainly women.
Yeah, more women than men get diagnosed with this.
Oh, that's interesting. But why would that be the case, do you reckon?
I don't know,
Me
actually.
neither.
I'm not sure.
It's just people like to brand difficult women.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think
Pathologize
there's
them.
been plenty of adjectives given to women over the years for being
Yeah.
quote unquote hysterical.
Yeah,
or
Yeah.
God
I was
knows
just
what
going
else.
to say that. Yeah.
Hysteria was actually a
Yeah.
diagnosis,
Yeah. Right.
wasn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, I just want to say also that there's this film called Greenberg. Ben Stiller is acting in it, and if you watch the film, you would see these traits of borderline.
Okay.
And one of the things that he says in the film that has stayed with me, and I watched this film like many years ago, but in that film, he says, "Hurt people hurt people." So he's like this really difficult guy, like anger and insulting and arrogant and you know all that. And then you do see like his pain and his hurt and how he's created such a shield, such a wall,
Right.
isolating himself from others.
Right.
But that's a very profound statement.
Yeah.
Hurt people.
That is a very profound statement, yeah. And so now I actually wanted to jump in from borderline to bipolar. So now because again, this is also something that people use very, very casually, like, oh, that person was happy chilling with us 1 minute and then they're just so angry, they're so bipolar. So again, that's a very crass analogy which people use casually. But what is it actually?
So bipolar, the distinct feature of it is a person has mania, manic episodes,
Right?
where it's just over the top kind of behavior, very impulsive.
Okay.
So like it could be something like, you know, having like
Spending a lot of money.
spending a lot of money, or just like having like rampant sex,
Okay.
giving possessions away, walking on the
Right.
road and just giving things away to people.
Right. Oh, wow.
Feeling
okay.
invincible.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Even going like on a bender on a
Yeah.
night or something like
Yes.
that. Okay.
Yeah,
fine.
like binge drinking, something like that. Or
But for prolonged periods of time, right? There needs to be 3 weeks or a certain amount of time where you have to have experienced this recklessness.
yeah, or a certain amount of manic episodes in
Yeah.
like say a 3-month period or something like that.
Okay.
Or like, you know, buying like everyone in the bar, like drinks are on me
Yeah.
kind of behavior.
Right.
And so that's mania or depression.
Okay.
Really, really
Which is polar
severe.
opposite
Yeah,
behavior.
yeah. So it's
Okay.
manic depression,
Right.
is bipolar.
Wow. Okay. So again, is that something that is mainly treated via cognitive behavioral therapies, or there's
But
also
just,
medication?
sorry, just before that though, I think one of the myths around bipolar is that it's happy versus sad. That
Okay.
you're really, really happy for 3 weeks at a time, and then you're really, really sad for 3 weeks at a time. But it doesn't always manifest like that at all. In fact,
Okay.
you could be not happy,
Right.
but super manic.
Right.
And you could be kind of functioning, but very, very, very low functioning. You could be depressed.
Sure.
Right? Am I?
Yeah.
Avanti, have you ever had a client who was bipolar?
No, I haven't.
Okay. What about you, Alicia?
Yeah.
Okay. What was it like for that? Like, if you can paint a picture of what that person was
Yeah,
like.
so actually the symptoms I was describing was an actual person
Okay.
who would do this, like walk, give away even things off of himself, like his
Wow.
sunglasses or hat or, you know, like his bag.
Just
And
give it to a random person on the road.
Yeah, because I
Wow.
was a manic episode. And spending lots of money and like buying everyone at the bar drinks.
Right. And then when he had his depressive moments, how did that manifest?
Yeah, just, you know, not getting out of bed, not wanting to talk to anyone.
Wow.
Your appetite is affected, your sleep is affected. Yeah,
Okay.
those kinds of things.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So
personal hygiene gets affected also.
right. Okay. So it is absolute polar
It's
opposite.
just, yeah.
Wow.
In both cases, though, your personal hygiene can
Yeah,
get affected.
yeah.
Right? It can be a sign of
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So we've talked a little bit about
You wanted to talk about treatment.
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to know. So now, again, with these sort of things, the treatment that is involved, is it feels like, based on what we've been talking about, I think generally, apart from finding specific medication that works for you and your system, the other stuff seems to be pretty similar across the board, by way of be it some form of exercise, some form of social interaction or some sort, or if you have like heavy anxiety or social anxiety, gradually, I guess, getting to that point in some way, some sort of art therapy or even animal therapy and that sort of thing. These are generally the sort of things that people across the board would do, right? You'd say?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Which is, I suppose there is. Yeah, okay, cool.
Actually, another thing I was going to say also, like with both borderline and bipolar, there's also substance abuse issues. That's a very prominent feature.
Right. Okay.
To cover up the feelings of emptiness?
Yes. So another film, I'm bringing in these pop culture references.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
please do.
Yeah.
Rachel getting married with Anne Hathaway as the actress, and in this film, it's like she can't handle the fact that her older sister is getting married, and all the attention is on her. So she has this sort of relapse where she, is just like having sex with some person, or like getting really drunk, getting really sloshed, or like doing some kind of drugs, while all this like positive celebration is happening. It's like the focus is not on her.
Right.
So that becomes the trigger. And like this, like, it's almost like a family intervention has to happen to like really get her to be a part of like the family and really be. But it's very well made and very real. And she's young in the film, like she's like in her early 20s, so also that sense of like maturity and responsibility, like all those things are also like highlighted. And
Right.
It really makes me wonder if you can ever spot for bipolar and borderline as a child, and then, try and create a more nurturing environment for this child, because it is a response to what's going around that then stimulates your predispositions, your genetic predispositions like impulse control. I just really wonder, because I don't think there is anything that allows you to spot it yet. I mean, when someone's a kid.
Yeah, and usually, I mean, you see that a person with this kind of diagnoses, there's got to be in the family someone who is either an aggressor or, they have their own unhealed issues, and that just gets sort of passed down.
In some
line,
way. Right. And now I wanted to jump onto another one that, another illness that people generally also sort of use very, very crassly or casually, which is OCD. Obsessive compulsive disorder, for anyone who's not familiar with the acronym. So now, and we see this very, very casual. We see this very, very often where people are like, oh, I'm so OCD, like my, all my socks have to be like in this particular form.
Or my clothes have to be
color
coded, like all the blues and then all the whites.
Yes.
Yeah, being organized doesn't mean you have OCD.
Yes.
Guys.
So please tell us. I mean, I know that the real definition. I'm anticipating that the real definition of OCD is not as silly as that. So what would it actually be?
Yeah, so it's a combination of having these obsessive / repetitive / intrusive thoughts along with the compulsion, so the actual behavior and the act of like doing the repetitive things.
Right.
So it's got to be a combination of both thought as well as action.
As well as action.
Otherwise, there are categories where it's just like a person gets diagnosed with, say, depression with obsessive thoughts or with compulsion.
Ruminations.
Right.
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 So there's that distinction. And again, I think according to the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, I think they have these specific criteria of like you have to display this kind of behavior for, again, I think like 6 months at a time, or I'm not sure if it's 6 months or 3 months, you know. It has to be in a certain time period where this
it has to interfere with your regular life.
Yes,
That's
and your regular
key.
functioning.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would you say that an appropriate example of this would be someone who, locks their front door at least 15 times because they believe that if they don't do that, something ominous will happen to them. Yeah, that's an appropriate example of what
Yeah.
OCD actually is.
Yeah, and that's pretty
Right.
severe.
Right.
15 times is pretty severe.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't always stop with 15. It's like, oh my God, did I do it? Did I do it? Did I really do it? Did I really do it 15 times?
Yeah.
And to go back and do
Yeah.
it.
Wow, okay. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, please keep in mind that OCD does not have to do with your color coordinated socks. There's a lot more to it than that.
It can also be triggered by, you see it in kids, but it can also be triggered by things like pregnancy, right? So I was reading about the fact that, and this is something not a lot of people talk about, but post-pregnancy, not everyone, but a lot of people now talk about post-pregnancy depression and,
Right.
the
Postpartum,
blues,
yeah.
postpartum depression. But what we don't talk about is postpartum anxiety or postpartum intrusive thoughts that
Okay.
enter your mind. And I was reading it's really high statistic, like 67% of women experience these intrusive thoughts
Right.
that are really, really obsessive. Of course, the difference is that they don't act on it, on
Right.
some of these thoughts. But it's very, very common.
Okay.
So they're negative thoughts and
They're
destructive thoughts.
Yeah. Like, oh my God, I could hurt my baby. And what if I hurt my baby? Oh my God, what if I could hurt my baby? What would I do to hurt my baby?
Wow, okay.
What would I do to hurt myself? And it goes on and on and on. Now, the difference between OCD and that is they're not actually going out and hurting their baby.
Right, okay.
Or
understood.
doing those things to test out
Yes,
what
yes.
it would be like, right?
Yeah. OCDs follow through with action,
Yeah.
Yeah.
effectively.
Yeah.
Okay, wow. So, wow, I've learnt a good amount today already.
Yeah, and the best treatment for this is CBT, is
Cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah, where you really challenge the person's core beliefs
Right.
and thinking pattern or
Yeah.
the thoughts and I mean, personally, I feel that this can be remedied even without medication.
Okay.
It is possible.
Okay.
It's just longer. It takes longer.
Yeah, it might take a little
Okay.
longer, but I have worked with somebody who we didn't need medication, or he had stopped taking medicine, and
Okay, fantastic.
yeah, it was a few sessions and no more of that stuff.
So, for our listeners who may not be aware of cognitive behavioral therapy, what sort of practices go into that? When you say someone is working with cognitive behavioral therapy, what sort of therapy is that
So
exactly?
basically, it is talk therapy,
Right.
and it just involves asking the right kinds of questions.
Okay.
And testing your beliefs, your core beliefs.
testing and challenging the person's core beliefs.
Okay, fine.
And it's really the idea that your cognitions affect your emotions, which
Okay.
then affect your behavior.
Yes, your actions.
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
So if you can change your cognition, your thought, then that would have a different impact on your emotions, which would have a different impact on your behavior.
So would some sort of, I won't say disassociation because that's a very strong word, but say sort of detachment from thoughts and not basically learning not to have your thoughts overwhelm you or your emotions overwhelm you. Is that also sort of part of cognitive behavioral therapy?
I would say that to have replacement
Yeah.
thoughts
Replacement thoughts. Okay.
that are more beneficial
Rational.
or rational or
Right.
more productive.
If you're terrified of going out to a bar on your own, the CBT way of dealing with it could be, okay, so you go out on a bar on your own, what happens? And they're like, oh, everyone stares at me and everyone thinks of this. And they're like, okay, you go on your bar alone, everyone stares at you and everyone thinks this about you. What next?
Right.
What next? What next?
Yeah,
Kind of
yeah,
situation, right?
Okay. So you're kind of breaking down what could happen as far as, what's the worst that could happen? Is that it? Or...
Yeah, kind of also presenting, I think part of it is presenting to you that the worst is never the worst.
Right. Okay, I see.
Yeah, and it's also
Part
about
of it.
Yeah, it's also about addressing this aspect of really needing a sense of control.
Right. Okay.
That's a big part of it.
So learning to let go of that sense of control.
Or how to redirect that.
Okay.
Like what's a more positive thing to control
I see.
rather than doing an action that's not really benefiting me in any way. It's just
Okay,
repetitive. It's just on that autopilot mode. Like,
Right.
for example, this one person, it was like he had to keep touching all the Ganeshas,
Right. Okay.
in the home, and something was incomplete or cause anxiety if he didn't do that.
Okay.
Or even like seeing cars on the parked cars that have Ganeshas, you'd have to touch
Touch those.
the window.
Okay. So how did he suss out that particular action with cognitive behavioral therapies?
Yeah, that, so this was a long time ago, so I'm trying to remember, but it was more about like, to redirect that control more into like putting that energy back into yourself, like back into like your thoughts, or what would be a better way to think about it, or put my energy into like alternate thoughts.
Right. Okay. So basically the first step would be to sort of firstly catch yourself in that space and go, wait, hold on. This is what's going on.
Yeah.
And then you start to...
And another big thing about this is to remove negative self-judgment.
Right.
So that was the thing that did work was like I said to him, throw out of the window the idea that you have to fix this.
Yeah.
Let it be as it is.
Let it be as it is.
It's giving you a sense of joy or pleasure, or sense of like feeling complete in a way. Then you need that, and that actually was almost like
it freed him.
Yeah. So this is part of like the strategic sort of model of therapy.
Interesting. So you changed the paradigm where his idea was there's something wrong here,
right?
And you were like, there's not.
Yeah.
Okay, that's actually very interesting. I can imagine that could be very liberating for someone.
Yeah.
And looking at the clock, oh dear, I think that's unfortunately all that we have time for this episode as well. But I think the 2 myth-busting episodes that we've done so far were actually quite enlightening. Thank you so much for being with us on 2 episodes, Alicia.
Yes,
it was great having you.
Thanks, Alicia.
For having me. Yeah.
And thank you guys for listening. If you have any questions or stories that you want to share, please do write to us at writetomarbles@gmail.com. The 2 in that is TO, so writetomarbles@gmail.com. Thank you guys so much for listening. I've been Zain.
And I'm Avanti.
And Alicia. Thank you again.
Thank you.
We're signing off. Bye.
Bye.
Some time ago, 5 successful restaurateurs came together to form the Colaba Cartel. The founders of the table, Gauri Devi Dayal and Jay Yusuf, partnered with the founders of Woodside Inn, Abhishek Honawar, Pankil Shah, and Sumit Gambhir to open a new restaurant in Colaba. If you've ever dreamed of opening a restaurant or love eating out, you want to listen in. The Colaba Cartel. This exclusive 10-part series is hosted by Gauri Devi Dayal and Amit Doshi. Catch new episodes of the Colaba Cartel every Monday and Thursday on the IVM Podcasts app, website, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Vishal Gondal, an entrepreneur. I've had the chance to meet and understand how some of the super achievers have hacked their way to success, and they have done spectacular innovations. Now I take a closer look at these people's lives to find out what lies beneath the force, only on the Vishal Gondal Show. Episodes out fortnightly on Wednesdays on the IVM website, app, or your favorite podcasting platform.